Hey guys, how are you doing? This is Zeb from Zed Outdoors and I hope you're having an awesome day. So today I have come down to see Nick Westermann of Hewn&Hone. Nick, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks.
So if you're not familiar with Nick, Nick is a full-time professional toolmaker based here in beautiful rural Wales. Now I have previously filmed with Nick a series of videos that have been very well received. Now I'm back here to see Nick for another series of videos. Now in this particular video, what you're going to be seeing is Nick's process for transforming a drill bit into a Kolrosing knife. And Nick is going to show you the entire process from start to finish. So 2 or 3 things to kind of touch on before we get on with the meat and bones of this video. Number one, this video has been time-stamped into all the different sections. So if you hover along the timeline of this video, you can see the different sections of this video timed out. And also down below, I've broken down all the timestamps of this video as well. Now on the left-hand side, you will see the corresponding times for those timestamps. Now YouTube has a very cool feature. If you click on that time, it will jump straight to that section. The timestamps help kind of break this video down into different chunks. So as you move forward and use this video as a reference material, if you want to now go back to a specific section of the video, rather than manually scrolling through, you can use those timestamps to jump straight to the section that you need. Secondly, what I'm going to be doing is put a link below to the previous series of videos and the other videos that I'm going to be filming with Nick on this particular visit down to see him. And thirdly, what I'm going to be doing is anything that we've referenced in this video in terms of tools or materials and whatnot, I'm going to put links below to those in the description so you can go check those out. So without further ado, I hope you enjoy the rest of this video. So Nick, to begin the video, I wanted to ask you, where did the inspiration for this project come from?
Well, I suppose it sort of ties in a bit with the idea that if you repeat something 11 times on the internet, it becomes fact. And it's sort of become fact that you can make a Kolrosing knife or a Kolrosing blade from a drill bit. And you absolutely can. But one of the things which is so often missed is about which end you use, and I think it makes a big difference. So that's really what I wanted to talk about with that, because one thing you'll notice, we can come over this one, with a drill bit is that it's gripped by the jaws of a chuck, and it's much easier for the hard jaws of a chuck to grip a shank if it's soft. And you can see this huge burr which has been thrown up where the drill bit has spun, and if you left it hard, which you could do, I think the danger is that if it spins you then damage the jaws on the chuck, whereas the drill bit is disposable really. So generally the shank of a drill bit is actually quite soft. If I take a file to it here, you can see I can actually file it away, whereas you wouldn't expect to be able to do that because everybody thinks that drill bits are hard. So the idea that if you're making a Kolrosing blade from a drill bit and using the shank and it must be really hard because it's a drill bit isn't necessarily true. So what we're going to do is look at the section. Obviously it's soft at the shank and it's hard at the end, and we're going to try and find out the point where it stays, where it starts to be hard enough to make a decent edge or make a decent blade. So to that end, rather than, I mean, you could just go along with the file and you can hear where it's hard here and it's a bit softer there. I can feel it's a bit softer there, but it's a bit subjective. So what I've done is I've actually got 3 drill bits. These from a set I used to buy when I did a lot more metal work. I used to buy my drill bits from Axminster Power Tools, and they were decent enough high-speed steel drill bit. I used to use them in production work. So I had 3 of these identical. And what I've done on this one is I've just ground 2 flats on it so I can put it in the hardness tester and we can actually run along and actually see, hopefully we'll get to a point where it's hard near this end and see at what point it gets hard. So that what we can then try and do is see if we can actually tie that in, because obviously you won't have a hardness tester with a diamonds in because they're not so common, but a lot of people have got a file. When we've got some data on how hard it is, I'll just see if we can see if there's a way to tell with a common file where it is. So the next thing we're going to do is to take some readings along here and see how hard the steel actually is.
So Nick, this is your hardness tester. For those that are not familiar with what a hardness tester is, how would you explain that?
Well, simply it tests the hardness of a steel. How it does that, what I'll do is I'll show you, this is a test block which I use to calibrate, which I've already done. But you put there's a diamond here on the top, and what you do is you put your test piece up against the diamond, and then I've got to rotate this until the dial goes round 3 times. So 1, 2, 3, and ideally stop right at the centre of the top. That put a preload of the diamonds into the steel, and then I press this, and it actually presses the diamond down into the steel. And then when I do this, it reads how far the diamond, how deep the depression is, and the depth of depression on the Rockwell C scale will give you the hardness of the steel. So this is coming out, it's coming out closer to, yes, that's about 56 3/4 I'd give that, which for a knife is a bit low, but it's not too bad. However, I know that actually this block is between 58 and 59, so this hardness tester today is running, it's reading a bit low. So I've got to add roughly, well, 1 3/4, but we'll say we'll add 2 to each reading. And that will give us a more accurate reading. So just using that to test. I could adjust the calibration on it, but because we're looking within this scale, I'm perfectly happy to do that, because the actual hardness doesn't matter too much. As you'll see, the variation we're going to get is going to be much more. So what it's doing is, you can see from this, it leaves a little indent into the steel, and the size of the indent is dependent on how soft the steel is. So if it's harder, it's going to leave a smaller dent. So that's how it works. So you can only really test on a flat surface, which is why otherwise a diamond would skid off, which is why I've ground flats. So I've got 5 lines, and I'm just going to test it and write down the readings, and hopefully it's going to get harder as it gets towards the cutting edge of a drill. So hopefully we can pick up a hardened section where we're going to put the blade. So I'll start at the first section. No, not brilliant, but I'll do. Yeah, that's way soft. So that's got a hardness of 26. I mean, we can add 2, but it really doesn't matter. I mean, like, you don't really get a cutting edge until you start getting to, we'll put 26 down, but until maybe high 40s, it doesn't even count as an edge in my opinion. So I'll do the next one. Getting better. There we go, it's getting harder. 42.
So that's quite a jump, isn't it? Just in a short space.
It is, I'm surprised, yes. I'm surprised it made that much difference, yeah. Boom. That's really bad. I should have stopped at the middle, but it's... You can see it's getting harder. There we go, 49. That's better. Okay, 57. There we go, 62. So you can see there's a dramatic difference. And then, I mean, we can add 2, the only ones which matter really. I mean, so right at the end, number 5 is actually +2 is 64 Rockwell hardness, which is really pretty hard for, that's right at the top end of what you'd expect a blade for. So if you made it this way round, then you've got a really good edge. If you make it that way round, which a lot of people seem to do because it makes sense to, because you can even use this to drill your hole, you'd have 26 by 28, which is no sort of cutting edge at all. I mean, the reason they hold up is because a Kolrosing blade doesn't really do a lot of cutting. It's really just forcing the wood apart. But then if you take the view that 28 is all right, you might as well just sharpen up a nail rather than bother with a drill bit. So that's what I'm saying, you might as well do it the right way round.
So this is just to kind of recap then. So what you're doing here, you're illustrating how, basically what part of the drill is optimal for making a Kolrosing blade, and not all of it is created equal, basically.
Yes, it's purposely left soft at the shank, but obviously it has to transition to being harder for where the drill actually cuts. So yes, and it's trying to find the point where that transition is. Because, I mean, it's nice to know, but it's hard enough before you get into the flutes, because you could find it's only hard right at the flutes, and you could try and grind a point in the flutes, but it'd be a right pain trying to line it up and not. But it means that you can actually, we can grind it sort of here and not have to worry too much about the flutes when we grind the bevels on. So, but there was quite a difference between 59, which was 61, to 64. So anywhere between here seems pretty decent. So which is fairly easy to use. You don't want to go much shorter because then it's going to be a bit difficult to hold it. So, but also I say you don't want to be trying to be grinding a point where there's flutes, because you can quite easily. It's a pain because obviously they twist all the way around, so it'd be hard to line it up. So what we'll do now is we'll put this in the vise and just see if I can notice a difference when I'm filing, because I know what the different hardness is, and see if you can tell, because you're not going to have one of these, so we'll just see how that equates to using a file.
So Nick, what's next in the process?
Well, I've mounted the drill bit in the vise, and we now know how hard it is at various sections, so I'm going to see if I can equate this to how easy it is to file it, because that's the sort of way that you're going to try and do this at home or in your workshop or whatever. This is something which you could actually replicate, whereas if you've got a hardness tester, you probably don't need to hear this anyway. So that's what we're going to do. So we know at the first mark we're at 28 Rockwell hardness, which is very, very soft. So yeah, I can just file this. It feels like it's harder than normal steel, but you can file that, so it's not going to produce much of an edge. We're now 42 plus 2, 40. This is almost, you could make an edge out of this. It's not going to be brilliant, but it would be all right. But I can still file it. It doesn't feel massively different. It's still fileable. Number 3 is 51, which again I should be able to file it. I can feel this is more difficult, but it's still easily fileable. Yeah, it's more difficult, but now we get to number 4. This would give the hardness tester says it would be 61, which would be perfectly decent as an edge steel, and I think this will be pretty hard to, you can see I'm just making a notch in it, but I think if we look at the file, I've killed the file. You see it's gone all shiny at this section here. That's just taking the teeth off the file. So yeah, so if you destroy, this is why I swapped over from my bigger file, because I was saying to Zed I don't want to destroy it instantly. So I've got a disposable file. And then the next one, number 5, 64 Rockwell. I know this will, yeah, I can't do anything to that. I can't make that bite. And if I just use a bit of file here, which is new and good, yeah, you can see instantly it's just taking the teeth off the file. So if you can take the teeth, if you can, yeah, you might be able to reuse an old drill bit, but you'll destroy a file, and then you can make a Kolrosing blade. But yeah, really, if it's taking the teeth off the file, that's the point that you want to. If you can get to that point, then you know you're in the region that you'd make a durable blade. And it will be durable because drill bits are pretty tough. They're not. It's not going to be too hard. And the grind on a Kolrosing blade is actually quite obtuse, so you're not likely to chip a point or crack it or anything. So go for a section which doesn't file. So yes, fairly simple, and again pretty obvious which end we should be using of a shank.
So just to kind of summarise it, so for those at home or in a workshop, obviously they have a drill bit. So what you've demonstrated here, obviously you use the actual hardness tester. Most people, including myself, are not going to have that. So would I be right in saying what you're demonstrating here is using, is that a needle file? Is that what they're called?
It is a needle file, but any file will do. It's just, as I say, I didn't want to take the teeth off a bigger, more expensive file. So yes, yeah, any file. I'd use a fairly fine-toothed file for testing with this to give it a better chance, because a really coarse tooth file is more likely to struggle on harder steels, but any fine tooth file will do, yes.
So using essentially a disposable needle type file?
Well, yes, except that when you find the right bit of steel, you're going to take the teeth off your file. So like, as I say, I wouldn't use a really nice file that you want to, it will damage the file, yes.
And so using this kind of test, you're basically able to ascertain the hard part of the drill, basically?
Yes, absolutely, yes. Yeah, that's the idea, yeah. Yes, I mean, I already know because, but I'm just like verifying it, yes, yeah.
So what's next in the process?
Well, I need to separate the shank from the fluted section. The easiest way for me to do it is to use an angle grinder, and the safest way. But I'm aware that not everybody's going to have an angle grinder, so we're going to try another way. And I've got a spare one if this doesn't work. So if it doesn't work, you probably won't see this video, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, so what I'm going to do is, because we know it's hard and relatively brittle here, I mean, if we try to snap it, which is what we're going to do at the shank, we also know it would bend right at the end, because we know how soft it is, but we know it's hard there. If I was just to put this in the vise and hit it, you wouldn't know whether it's going to break. If you're going to be grinding this, if you're going to be making a blade, you must have a grinder, because as we've established, you can't file it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grind a notch in at this section, and then hopefully if I hit it, it will break at the notched area. So I'm just going to turn this on. I won't put the extraction on because it makes a lot of noise. I'm not going to do a lot of grinding. I'll just strap this over. Well, it's not a very big notch. I'd advise doing more, but we'll just see. And it's not where I wanted it. But apart from that, I think it's perfect. So I'm going to put it in the vise. I'm going to hit it this way so it will open at the notched area. And just to be safe, no, it worked. There we go, that snapped pretty much where I wanted it.
So we can keep this in the video?
Yes, everything's fine, yes. Maybe I swapped it under there, it's all sleight of hand. Right, so what we're going to do now is grind the bevel on. This is the jig which I use for grinding the blades. Let's get, that's a nice one. Maybe. The hewn&hone blades which I make, which are similar, but...
so just to touch on that briefly then, so obviously you've got the hewn&hone brand, so on there, in short, you have available finished Kolrosing blades, is that correct?
Yes, yes, or as much time as I can. Yes, we've got those, yes, which are fully ground, yes, ready to go. So yeah. So what I'll do, normally I have to spend time lining this up, but obviously as it's round it makes no difference at all. Although I want the flutes to be on the side. This is a different diameter to what I normally use, but I don't see why it wouldn't work. Yeah, I think that's fine. So it's a very simple jig. All I do is I grind this way and that way. What I will do actually is, it was a bit much to expect to grind off at 45 degrees, because I want the, let's look at one which is ground, here we go. Because you want the actual cutting angle to be at about 45 degrees, to make things a bit easier, I'm going to grind this to 45 degrees now, and then put the bevels on, rather than, because it's going to look a bit weird being ground in this direction, so because I'm not used to grinding like that. So what I will do actually is I'll just move over to a bigger grinder and just grind this over, which is just behind you. Grind this to 45 degrees this way, and this will make a lot of noise. Two things to notice with that is that you got the sparks are red. They're like quite a dull red, which is a sign that it's high-speed steel. I think that's a tungsten in it which does that. So definitely this is a high-speed steel blade. Also, if you look at this, I ground enough that you can see a bit of temper colour in that. It's gone to a sort of stark straw. There's a bit of brown in there. That wouldn't have quite affected the hardness of a blade which I'd tempered, because I tempered to about that colour. But if I'd got it any hotter and it was a carbon steel blade, a plain carbon steel blade, you'd be starting to affect the temper. But high speed steel can take that with no difficulty, so you've got less to worry about overheating it, because well, most drill bits you'll find will be high speed steel now. If they're not, it's very rare to find a high carbon steel blade, and it will say on it HCS rather than HSS if it is. So what I'm going to do now, see, it's a lot more straightforward. I'm going to grind the bevel this way, and then I'll turn it round and grind the bevel the other way.
So now you're going to be grinding the bevels on the Kolrosing blade, and you're going to be using a jig that's proprietary to you, okay, and the system that you use. So the question I have for you is, for those watching the video that don't have this jig, what is your advice on how they can achieve the same angle without a jig?
Right, well, there's a couple of ways. Obviously you have to use a grinder of some sort. We've established that a file won't cut it, and like, as I was saying, if you were to like use the soft end of the drill bit so you could file it, you might as well just be using a nail. So we're going to assume it's too hard to file. So you've got to be using a grinder of some sort. You could use a bench grinder, and then yeah, I've not got a way of using a bench grinder, but you could use a bench grinder. But assuming you're using a linisher like this, then the way which I approach it is I'm using a table, which is again one of our tables which we do sell, which has got a 17.5 degree angle on it, which is set to a 17.5 degree angle, which will give a 35 degree included angle, which is about right for a Kolrosing blade. As I was saying, this isn't a blade which cuts as much as pushes the wood apart, so you want quite a coarse angle because you're trying to open up a line really. So the main thing is to have a table, or on whatever machine you've got, a table which you can adjust to somewhere around that. Yeah, I mean you could play about different angles, 17.5 degrees. This jig simply just positions the blade at 90 degrees to the table, on both sides, so it works on both sides. You could use a piece of wood with the hole drilled in and just put a normal wood screw in to hold it. It's not, although depending on the blade, you might need to be quite thin to get the clearance, unless you're just grinding off here and here. You see, then you could use a thicker block. But really you could just drill a hole in, and if you drill it at 45 degrees, then everything lines up, which is why I ground at 45 degrees, then you're just grinding everything flush.
So just to kind of recap then, so this is a wraparound table you sell that is designed for the Pro Edge?
Yes, for Sorby Pro Edge, yes. Yeah, and I use this for a lot of, I mean, it's adjustable to lots of different angles, so it will, you can grind a lot of different blades with it, but that's the basis of most of the blade grinding I do on the Pro Edge. But yeah, so I'll start grinding now. As I say, I don't have to worry too much about overheating because it's a steel which is naturally resistant to it, and we'll see how it goes. I'm going to swap the others. And I'm just trying to balance the bevel so it's longer on that side, so I'm going to finish off on this side. You see that white burr appear on the edge? That means I've hit the, I'll just take it off on this side. See, it's gone now, and then as soon as I grind, you'll see a burr appear. And that white burr there means you've hit edge, the two bevels are met. So that's it really, it does go quite quickly. If you keep everything straight, if you grind a straight line, you'll grind a blade with a straight edge. If you were to grind with a curve like this, you'll grind a blade which is curved. I don't know a huge amount about Kolrosing, I have to admit, but these blades are more, with a straight edge, are more of a pull blade, as I understand. If you want to push with your Kolrosing, then you want a blade edge which is curved, because it allows, it won't just dig in, you can push as you go. But the blades I generally grind are pull blades like that. So what I'm going to do now is put on a finer grit and just work down through the grits.
So what grit have you transitioned onto now?
I've put on a Trizact A45, which is I think 400 grit. That equates to, yes, 400 grit, which is quite a big jump from 600, but it will take it. What I tend to do, because you're grinding in exactly the same direction with the jig, it can be hard to see when you got through the scratch pattern. So what I tend to do is just mark up the bevel just a bit. You don't have to do a lot. And then when that's gone, you know you've got through the scratch pattern. So I'll just start this off. You won't necessarily see sparks at this stage, so you have to be a bit more careful. See, there's still just a little bit of blue hanging on there. And then I'll go down to the other side. go. And to be safe, I'm just going to mark it up again and do it again. A little bit there. Then I'll do the other side. Right. I'm then going to mark it up, ready for the next grit. The final grit is an A16, which is a 1200 grit, which is fine enough. So I just swap belts. Oh, yeah, that must be it. It's that old that it's worn off the. Yeah, I've written 16 on it. For just that reason, they last long enough that you can wear the. You can't read the back in that way. And that's it. And that's quite hot. But that's there's a few minor scratches well away from the edge, but that's the sort of finish you should be able to get. If you can use a jig of some sorts, you should be able to get a nice flat bevel. If you're holding it freehand, I mean, it's not going to matter too much because it's only a very tip you cut with, but a jig does make it easier. So that's the blade. And I'll just show you one of mine just as an example to see the slight differences between them.
So Nick, we've got two Kolrosing blades here. So the one at the back, from my angle, is the one that you demonstrated, and the one nearest to me is the one you typically stock on hewn&hone. Can you just talk a little bit about the difference between the two?
Yes, well, I mean, I think, to be honest, one of the biggest differences is aesthetic. It looks slightly pinched, I think, if you just grind out of a round bar. Does it matter aesthetically? I think aesthetically it does matter. I think it's nice to use a tool which you like the look of, and also I always like the difference, the contrast between like the scale and the ground section. But you know, the wood doesn't notice a difference in that. However, I think that you've got a little bit more clearance visually as well when you're using it, with the tip coming away from the centre line of the tool, which I think will help slightly. But I would say that the difference is largely aesthetic. You've got different steels, obviously. High speed, it's probably messed up your camera angle. High speed steel, it may hold an edge longer, but generally it's accepted that high carbon steel will get sharper and, you'll get a sharper edge with high carbon steel. But as I say, all these edges are very much understressed because you have this 35-degree angle, so they're not going to see a lot of damage or wear really, which is why you can get away with, if you do use a drill bit and use the wrong end, the soft end, it will still work because the steel isn't actually that stressed that much. But as I say, if you're going to do that, you could just as well use a nail or something, and then you wouldn't have to worry about like snapping the end of a drill off. You could use something softer. So if you are going to use a drill, I'd definitely do it the other way around.
So Nick, we had a quick discussion off camera, and I thought it would be important to get it on camera. And that is, you were talking about the fact that at the time of recording, you have written an article kind of outlining everything we've discussed in this video.
Yes, it's going to be coming out in the Bodgers Gazette, which is the publication for the Association of Pole Lathe Turners and Green Woodworkers. Try and get that right. Bodgers is easier. I just sort of like the idea of going a bit more in depth. I think that's the point of this video. There's not really, maybe you'll buy a Kolrosing blade, but I quite like the idea of going into depth with a bit more detail about the sort of fundamentals or the basics of forging. Because if you understand forging or tool making, because if you understand sort of this sort of theory here, it makes much more sense as to why you can use a drill bit, but you need to use it right way around. And so there'll be an article saying much the same thing coming out in the near future.
So with the Bodgers Association itself, in case people are not aware, it's an organisation set up in the UK, but it has members from around the world in relation to all things green woodworking. And obviously, Nick, yourself, you're a member, I'm a member, and you were at the Bodgers Ball, which is the annual gathering. Once again, at the time of recording this, you were there quite recently, weren't you? Yes,
it was only a couple of weeks back, yes, yeah, a very hot event, but yes, very good. Yes.
Yeah, literally in terms of weather.
Yes. Yeah.
And you were teaching a class there, and what it is, the Bodgers every quarter release a gazette, which is an actual physical publication, and it's actually really good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a link down below to the Bodgers Association. It's really cheap for a yearly membership, and you get obviously the ability to join as a member, but then you also get a quarterly gazette. And at the time of recording this video, Nick is hopefully going to be appearing in the upcoming publication. So if you want to access that, I'll put a link below. We're not affiliated in any way, shape or form. We just want to give a shout out to the Bodgers who do some amazing work. But also in specific relation to this video, you'll be able to access the detailed article that Nick has written talking about how to make one of these Kolrosing blades. So there you have it, my friends. That is a wrap for this video. Nick, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was good.
Yeah, honestly, I've been aware for quite some time that you can make a Kolrosing blade from a drill bit, but I had no idea. When Nick first we were speaking about ideas for videos, he talked about this particular video that you're watching now. And when he explained the nuances to me, I was completely unaware of the obviously there's bits of the drill bit that are more optimal than others. And Nick put a lot of work in, so I need to thank him in terms of how he was going to explain the hardness factor and a lot of prep work for this. And I just want to wrap off by saying a couple of reminders, and that is I have filmed a series of videos with Nick on a previous visit to see him here at his workshop, and I'm also going to be filming other videos while I'm here on this particular occasion as well. I would highly recommend you go check those videos out. Links to all of those will be in the description. A reminder also that we have timestamped this video into all the different sections, because the idea with this video of Nick sharing this with you is that you're able to go out there and safely do this yourself and end up with a finished Kolrosing blade. So we worked on putting those timestamps in place. So as you move forward, you want to refer to a particular section rather than having to manually scroll through. You could just click on the times on the bottom below in the description, and it will jump straight to that section. And a final reminder that there are a few things referenced in this video that if you want to source them yourself, i.e. for example a finished Kolrosing blade that Nick has made, the wraparound table, other kind of bits and bobs. I'm going to put links below to all those kind of things that are referenced in this video to the hewn&hone website. And should you want to kind of source those things, then you could do that using the links below. And it also means you're supporting Nick's work. And I just want to kind of finish off by saying, once again, Nick, I really do appreciate you allowing me to document this process. I know this is something you've taken a very long time to figure out and do, and I want to sincerely thank you for allowing me to kind of once again document this process.
It's good to have you here. It's good. Yes, as I say, if I can, at least correct the idea of like using a drill bit for a Kolrosing blade. I think that's good. Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah.
Nick wanted to get that out of his system. That's it. Put the world to rights. And say, yeah, you can make it from a drill bit, but
do it properly.
Right, stuff. So, but once again, a sincere thank you to Nick for also just allowing me in his workshop and taking the time out to film this video. So there you have it, guys. That is a wrap for this video. Really hope you enjoyed what Nick has outlined here. Once again, links to everything down below. And last thing to say is, if you gained any value from this video whatsoever, I never even ask you to subscribe to my channel. What I will ask you is to go check out the hewn&hone website, and also give the hewn&hone Instagram a follow as well. Once again, the link will be below in the description. That's just our way of saying thank you to Nick for allowing me into his workshop and to document this entire process so that you may learn. So there you guys, I will see you on the next installment of a Z Outdoors video. And until then, I hope whatever you're doing, you have a blessed day, a blessed week ahead. From Nick Westermann of hewn&hone and myself, Z Outdoors, peace out.